Well, like you said, my name's Nathaniel Finch. I graduated in 2020. So what is that, 6 years ago now? Yeah. And basically, when I showed up, we were hardly doing any sports. There was one guy that did 2 games, and his grandma was listening, and that was about it. And it was just on the radio. So I went up to Mr. Foxworthy and said, hey, why don't we start doing this? Because we've got plenty of good sports teams here at Webo. First year's 2018, which is when the football team went to state. So it was a heck of a year for it. But basically, there's an audience out there that wants to see high school sports, and especially here in our community. Why don't we start broadcasting some games? It was a passion that I had, and he was like, well, here's $30,000 of our budget that we could just go buy brand new equipment, and, well, that's what all this is. So it's pretty cool, the faith he had in me there. I guess a little bit about me before I start talking about play-by-play. I went to UIND, University of Indianapolis, not the IUND crap that they are getting sued for taking our name, but UIND. And did play-by-play there. It's a small college, Division II. So basically from the day I stepped on campus, I was calling all their big games because they just didn't have a ton of people. And then now I'm working at Radio 1, the big radio station in Indy. We've got Hank FM and WIBC and some stations like that. But I work on the sports station, and I make sportscasts every day. So that's kind of the day job. And then I moonlight in play-by-play. I work for a couple different radio stations that cover high school sports, and then I also work for Roncalli High School, which is a 4A school in Indy. So basically just trying to piece together as much play-by-play as I can a couple years out of school. Yeah, yeah. I always like seeing your band of credentials that you've saved over the years. I kind of got a stack of them too from your, yeah. I also moonlight for Westwood One Radio, which is a national radio station that covers the NFL. So I've gone to, I don't know, a decent chunk of NFL games, and I was at the Final Four last year working there, things like that. So basically just I don't have a full-time job, but I have a whole bunch of either part-time or freelance stuff that you piece together to get play-by-play in. The thought of football play-by-play, I'm sure, is kind of intimidating, putting on a microphone and a headset, and now you got to talk for 3 hours, and it's all your voice that people are hearing. It is certainly a lot easier, or at least a lot less daunting than what it sounds. Big reason why our community loves football, and they love the fact that we broadcast these games, because, grandma of the starting quarterback in Florida can't ever come to the games to watch her grandson play, but she can turn it on, listen to you guys, watch it, and you basically have a buffer that if you sound terrible, people don't care because they just love that you're there. So that's good. So you don't have to be afraid or be nervous or think that you're going to suck, because maybe you will suck, but who cares? In 3 games in, you're going to kind of get the hang of it. So it seems like there's a lot of pressure, but it's very low pressure. We get a lot of views on your guys' broadcast because people love it. But because people love it, they're a lot more forgiving, and they understand you're students and you're new at this. So don't feel afraid to start because you don't think you're going to be any good at it. As long as you prepare for it and you take it seriously, you'll be in a good spot. So a couple things about the principles of play-by-play. We've got differences between TV and radio. You guys are TV. You've got the camera. You've got great camera people. You've shown the shot with these great cameras. TV play-by-play, the audience can see. So your job is not to say exactly what is happening. This guy's doing this guy's doing that. It is just to provide captions. So think of them, if they have you muted and they're just seeing the captions at the bottom, that's kind of what your job is. You team up with the camera to say who, what, when, where as the play-by-play guy. We'll talk about why later, but you're saying who's doing what. The quarterback is this guy. The guy that made the touchdown catch, here's his name. What happened? Touchdown, Webo. When? Hey, there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It's a big part of the game. And then where, they're in the red zone, they're crossing midfield, they're backed up, and they got a whole who, what, when, where, and why is the goal of play-by-play. Why will come later. For radio, they can't see, so you are completely everything that the audience can see. Think of, you're driving to the store and you're trying to listen to the game. If you're just up there, your TV is almost like Mr. Foxworthy likes to say it all the time, like you're just hanging out with your buddy drinking. I mean, if you're old enough, obviously you guys aren't, but you're just, hanging out on the back porch talking about, this guy's real good, and this guy, whatever. It's a lot less pressure because you've got the camera Radio needs to be very technical, very specific, so people can kind of picture what's going on. The whole goal of broadcasting sports is, if you think about it, what's the best way to watch a game? It's there in person. You're sitting in the front row, you're cheering on your team, you can see everything, you have a popcorn and a soda, and you're watching the game. Well, if you can't go to the game, next best thing is, let's see how we can get the audience to feel like they are in the front row cheering on their team, hollering at the TV. They've got their popcorn and their drink, and your job is to try to put them like they're at the game. So for radio, you're trying to describe everything, exactly what's going on, who's doing what, all this stuff, to make it feel like the person is there at the game, even though they obviously are not. You got to paint the entire picture. So if you close your eyes and you're saying everything that's going on, you want the audience to be able to now see what you're saying in a picture so they can visualize what's going on. Here's the, obviously the score and everything is important, how it's happening, sights, sounds, and even like smells and stuff. If you're sitting in the press box and the guy in the row in front of you just cracked open a big old pizza and you smell it, you can say, boy, this, the smell of pizza is great here at Western Boone, is the guy, in the front row. Now people will smell pizza in their mind, and it will put them like they're at the game, which is the whole goal of what we're doing here. Same deal. You provide the who, what, when, and where. Why we'll save for a little bit later, but that is the goal of play-by-play here. So TV and radio, you guys don't really have to worry about radio a bunch, but I just wanted to differentiate the two. TV is certainly a lot easier. Here is, let's see if this will play. Can you hit play there for me? The new PowerPoint was driving me nuts.
He's walking to the 3. He's at the 2. And the cat is in the CDW red zone. CDW, people who get it now, a policeman, a state troopers come on the field, and the cat runs into the end zone. That is a touchdown. And the cat is elusive, kind of like Barkley and Elliott. But he didn't know where to go. Look at, they're trying to corner him, and they got him in the end zone. There are state troopers all around this cat, which now climbs up into the stands. And the fans are running for their line. Now it goes back on the field again. And it's running in the back of the end zone. And it runs up the top.
So I showed this the video. What this clip is from is Kevin Harlan on the Westwood One radio broadcast. So the video I just put up there so you guys can see what's going on. But the audience of who he was talking to could not see what was going on. And he was literally describing play-by-play of a cat, which has nothing to do with the game, 9-3 in the second quarter. Who cares? We're talking about, this cat on the field. It seems silly, but what it does is put people at the stadium. I'm sure on this TV broadcast, the two guys were sitting there just chatting about, it was Halloween. Maybe they're talking about, joking about the cat, but probably talking about the stats of the game and, the juncture of where this contest was, because, it didn't really add much on TV to talk about the cat. But this radio guy really was obviously, in a funny sense, but giving play-by-play, the cat running in the end zone, because that made you feel like you were there. They could have done an ad read there and gone to commercial and done, whatever. But instead, he was giving you play-by-play of the cat to make it feel like you were sitting there in the front row. Yeah. Great guy. Yeah. It's kind of crazy, people at the highest level, you'd think they'd be a little stuck up, but no, he's great. Not anymore. Certainly the first couple times I did. You're a big Bengals guy, so seeing, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen walk right by me was cool. But now it's just like, almost like it's every day because you're used to it. Mm-hmm. That's it. I introduce myself and explain where I'm at in my career and just ask, hey, do you have any advice? What do you think? Because similar deal with how I'm here talking to you guys, you want to help the next generation. So Kevin Kugler has the big job. He's doing all this stuff. And you would think that, he doesn't have time for you. But last year he called the Final Four, and 15 minutes before the broadcast starts, him and I had like a 10-minute conversation just about my career. And he was giving me all these tips and asking me about it, which is crazy. I was just thinking, just to introduce myself and run off, and he sat down with me. So these broadcasters, they want to help you, not just in sports, but really in anything. Jim O'Brien, have you guys will go to Fox 59 this year, maybe? Yeah. You never don't have time for the next generation. So it's literally just as simple as, I go up, hey, here's my name. I'm not doing play-by-play today, obviously. I'm helping you with this or helping you with that. But I'm aspiring to be in your shoes one day. What can you tell me about the industry, about, different things like that? And they're always, they give you their email, say, reach out to me later. I'll give you some more tips. Send me your some examples of your play-by-play, and I'll give you a critique on it, stuff like that. So, big time. And Kevin Harlan says the same thing. He will send his stuff to, somebody else to listen to it, and hey, here's a couple things I think you could do better. The whole goal of sending your tape, whether it's sports or whether it's on the anchor desk or on the weather, however, is to find what's wrong with it so you can improve. You're not going to get anything from someone blowing smoke up your rear end saying, oh, you're so good, you're perfect, you're doing this. What you're hoping for is to send that in and figure out what you could do better. So it's not, they're not insulting you by saying, hey, you really need to do better at this, this, and that. It is simply trying to give you the critique to help you get better. And even if you're at the top of the place, like, let's say a guy like Kevin Harlan or Jim Nantz or whatever, they still admit there's still plenty more to improve, because there's never. That's the good thing about broadcasting. There's never the perfect broadcast, so you can always get better in every sense. You've never achieved the ultimate anything, because you can always get a little bit better. Here's an example of radio play-by-play. So the thought here is you can't see what's going on. If you just close your eyes and listen, you can kind of picture what's going on and who's doing what. Do you mind hitting play for me too while you're over there? So let's just say with that last clip, a perfect example. He tells you the score and when, so he gave you the what and when, touchdown, here's the score, here's the juncture of the game. But the way he described what was going on, it wasn't just Jeffrey made the catch and now they go ahead 9-3. It was twisting, falling down, acrobatic, got his foot in bounds over the defender, like as specific as literally humanly possible to describe what happened. So as you're sitting at home or you're driving to the store or whatever, you can hear exactly and kind of see what's going on and feel like you are there in the moment. So that's the difference between radio and TV, and I'll show you an example of TV in a second. But for radio, you are everything. You are saying, you heard earlier he was setting up the play. He was saying, this guy in motion, it's a three-man front, they're at this part of the field, and he was really setting up the play beforehand, saying exactly what, shotgun formation, running back just to your right, trying to paint the picture of how it looks pre-snap so the listeners at home can see exactly where they're lined up. And then as he describes the play, Kevin Harlan's the best at this. As the play is in motion, he explains everything at like 100 words a minute as you're going. So he does a really good job of this, and that's kind of the example of radio where you are painting everything, and you can't just simply say, right, drops back, throws to the end zone, touchdown Hendricks. Like, you really need to be as specific as possible. Now, you guys aren't doing very much radio play-by-play unless your camera goes out. So, we're not expecting this from anybody anytime soon, but there's just an example of how radio kind of differs from TV. Here's the TV example. Let's see if I can commandeer this over here. Another example. This is the color analyst. We'll talk about that in a little bit. One more example. So our play-by-play guy, very efficient, only a few words at a time. You can see what's going on, so he doesn't have to describe every single thing. He doesn't have to say, you know, every little contortion of the body as he makes the catch. It is just simply Kelsey down the field. Oh, they're in field goal range. And, it, you know, there's 6 words, and that's it. And then the color guy comes in and gives all this analysis of why it's important. Yes, 100%. Because, so the job of the play-by-play for TV, you'll hear it with Nance here. Handoff, Edwards-Helaire, 4 yards. Wide open, Hardman. He's only saying a couple of words at a time here. He is very efficient with his words here. He's not, you know, you heard Kevin Harlan where he's trying to say every little detail. You can see most of the details, so he's just providing captions. Like I said, he's telling you who, Kelsey, Hardman, Edwards-Helaire, etc., and then he's giving you the excitement in his voice, so you know, kind of the gravity of the moment. So he was certainly excited early on with the Davis catch or the Diggs catch, but you could really hear a difference in overtime, you know, on the game-winning call and things like that, where it is, it seems a lot easier listening to that than it did maybe listening to Kevin Harlan earlier on, where this is just simply Allen drops back, Davis open in the end zone, touchdown, and that's it. And then now the color guy comes in and says, oh, what a big catch. I can't believe he was that wide open. You saw the replay, drawing with the telestrator, the yellow lines, that was all the color guy. He now jumps in and provides analysts of the why. Play-by-play gives you, again, the who, what, when, and where. Who, Allen, what, drops back, throws to the end zone, caught by Davis, touchdown, and then, you know, you see the rest with the screen, the where, obviously, in the end zone, and then the when and on the screen with what the time of the game is. And then the color guy comes in and says why. That is a huge catch because now Buffalo takes the lead. Now they're up by 3 with a minute left. They've got a great chance of winning the game. Obviously, they didn't. But, you know, you get the point there. So it is, TV play-by-play is a lot easier than radio play-by-play because you are, he says 6 words per play instead of, you know, the 100 that Harlan might. And 2, because you've got the TV on there, you can see what's going on. He doesn't come in right away and start, you know, saying 1,000 words as soon as the ball snapped. You didn't hear Nance talk usually until the ball was thrown or handed off. It was just silence and you heard the crowd, which makes people feel like they're at the game. When you hear that crowd noise, it really puts you like you're there at the game. So it is, you know, that's why I say it's low pressure when you do this, because if all you do is say 6 words of play, you're pretty darn good at it. The people who say a lot more words, you know, it's worse play-by-play. You're not as good at it. So if you can master this, it's a good spot. No, especially when you've got that crowd mic. I mean, if they hear 50-50, 50% voice, 50% crowd, that's a good broadcast. I think once you get in the moment of the game, you're invested, obviously. You've done all the prep. You've spent all week thinking about it. You've spent a couple hours on the mic. Once you get to the end of the game, you'll start getting excited. I think naturally. You may think no, sitting on the couch. I'm just there. But when you're actually invested in it, I think you're going to get pretty excited. But yeah, I mean, it's just reps. And if you don't sound all that excited at first, I certainly didn't when I first called my first game that I called. I sounded like crap. Once you do 2 or 3 or 4 games, you're going to get the hang of it, and it's just going to come naturally with experience. Definitely. And I showed you all the big highlights at the end of the game here, so it certainly wasn't the best example of that. But when it's the first quarter, if you hear him going berserk over, a 5-yard gain, it's like, okay, is that really that important? Like, you kind of want to build up the excitement as you go throughout the game so people really can feel the impact of what's going on. If you're going crazy in the first quarter, well, what's left in the fourth quarter? If you sound the same in the first as you do the fourth, then it's going to make it sound like the fourth quarter's diminished value. So you really do want to kind of match your voice. I was talking about a little bit, use your voice as an instrument. You want to match your voice to the gravity of the moment. If it's the first quarter and there's a touchdown, cool, get excited, but don't go berserk. And also, don't ever scream into the microphone in anything. So some people they go, oh, it's a touchdown, oh my gosh. You can convey the excitement in the moment of the game without screaming. So you got to find a better way of, touchdown Chiefs, instead of saying, oh, it's a touchdown, oh my gosh, because the audience, they're going to turn you off. It's going to be killing them. You can find a way to make it sound important just by raising your tone in the way you say it as opposed to screaming, which it does take some getting used to. When you get a big play, you just want to start screaming. That's never the move. Sure. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. And we'll get into color analyst here in a minute. Let me switch slides here. There is, yeah. I've looked it up. I haven't seen it myself, but I have looked it up thinking that would be cool. It'd be a little complex, but you definitely could look into it. Well, I'll explain the color analyst side of that in a second, so I'll answer your telestrated question here in a slide or two. But here's just the play-by-play pyramid, and the whole point of a pyramid is the things at the bottom is what's holding the thing up. If you take a chunk off here at the top, well, the pyramid's still going to stand. Sure, it'll look a little funky, but if you take a chunk off this bottom, the whole thing's going to collapse, and now you got a pile of bricks. So at the bottom here, time and score is about as important as it gets. Radio, you have to say it every 2 minutes or any time the score changes. Very often, you hear them saying all the time, the time and score. It's second quarter, 3:50 left on the clock, and Weibo's up by 5. You got to say it over and over on radio. TV, they see it, as long as your scoreboard's working, they see it the entire time. So you don't have to say it maybe as much, but you want to highlight it when it's important. Big drive here, there's only 2 minutes left in the first half. They really need a score here because they're down 2 touchdowns. You don't have to say when you're on TV the exact Western Boone leads 25-20 with 3 minutes left, and you don't have to say every time, but you want to highlight it because this is the big part of the play-by-play pyramid. Obviously they can see it on the screen, but your job as the play-by-play guy is to provide the captions and so that people kind of understand the importance of that time and score. Maybe it's, a 3-0 ball game in the second quarter. Well, it doesn't sound very important, but clearly it's a defensive battle, it's a close game. Hey, if a team gets toward the red zone, that might be the only chance they have to score. You can highlight that kind of stuff. So time and score is as important as it gets. Your description for, especially on radio, is super important. Like I was showing with Kevin Harlan earlier on radio, twisting, acrobatic, gets his feet down, stays in bounds over the defender. TV, they can see it because, you can see exactly what's going on. You can see all that stuff. Radio, you want to describe it. So you kind of team up with TV to accomplish everything on this pyramid. and then pinpointing the ball. I'll show you an exercise here in a second for that. You want to make sure people know where the ball's at. Because if you say it's a 3-yard gain, that means probably nothing if they're way backed up with 75 yards of green in front of them, but it might mean everything if they're on the 4-yard line. So you really want to pinpoint the ball to help paint that picture pre-snap. And it's even important on TV because, sure, people can see, but how do they know, especially if you're zoomed in a little bit, if they see the 30-yard line there, well, which 30 is it? Is this almost into the red zone, or are you way back and you still got 70 yards of grass in front of you? Second tier, certainly important. Maybe not as important as the bottom, but certainly important on a pyramid. Why and who is important? Why does this matter? Well, again, if you are in the red zone in the second quarter and it's a 3-0 game, sure, it maybe seems like it doesn't matter, but it certainly does because that might be your only chance to score if it's a big defensive battle. Explain why, and it'll get people to kind of draw a little bit closer and feel a little bit more important. And then who's important? You know, obviously Travis Kelce made that catch earlier. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He makes plays like that all the time. He made the play that got him into the field goal range at the end of regulation and then caught the game-winning touchdown that changed the rules in overtime in the NFL. He's pretty darn important. You can explain that as well. You know, things like that. And then the top are kind of icing on the cake. Recap let's say you got somebody watching or listening. What are the chances it's a three-hour broadcast that they're going to listen to you or watch you the whole time? Probably, I mean, if it's grandma, she's seated with her big TV and she's going to watch the whole thing. But what if it's just somebody popping in on YouTube in the second quarter? They don't know what's happened for the previous hour. You can kind of recap that maybe every half hour or so, every couple drives. You know, if you're in the third quarter, hey, how do we get here? It was a defensive battle in the first quarter, but boy, these offenses have surely lit up. Now it's a 22-20 game, things like that. So giving a recap is not the foundation of play-by-play, but it's important, especially once you get toward the end of the game. You're in the fourth quarter. How did we get here? Because sure, knowing the time and score is great, but knowing how we got to that time and score is important as well. And then, like I said earlier, using your voice as an instrument. If it's the fourth quarter, you give it everything you got if it's a big game. If it's the first quarter, you do not want to give it everything you got because then it means your fourth quarter call is meaningless. So you got to kind of figure out what moments. And there's going to be select moments early on that maybe you do go not all out, but maybe you give the 75% hooray at it because it's a big play. But it doesn't all, you're not going to be at the top of your lungs the entire game. Pinpointing the ball here. Can somebody tell me where the ball is right there? Let's say the offense, I'm the quarterback, and I'm going toward Mr. Foxworthy. Can somebody describe where the ball is right there? There's no wrong answer. I just want to hear some thoughts. Yeah, it's the star. Sorry. I guess I could have put just a football, but... Yep. How else can you describe that? Because certainly saying ball's on the 44-yard line is great. If you say that 6 plays in a row, people kind of get sick of it. So how can you vary the way that you describe that? What's another way to describe that? Yep, that's fine. What else you got? Yep, what else? I'll give a couple examples. Nearing midfield. Just shy of the 45. Toward the halfway mark of, I don't know. You got to find a different way to describe it. In between the hash marks, at the, just past the 40, making their way toward midfield, making their way toward the 50. 100 different ways you could describe this, and you want to vary, really pinpointing the ball, but with everything. If you just say, he throws, catch, touchdown, every play, then it'll get kind of sick. And you'll notice yourself doing this. I mean, Kevin Harlan's the same way. Anybody's the same way. You got a crutch, especially when there's a little bit of pressure on and you got the headset on. Maybe you guys feel the same way at the anchor desk or whatnot. You kind of you have your go-to phrases that you say over and over, and you got to try to find a way to vary the way that you call games. When I call games, I've got a sheet of like my no words that I say all the time, and I write it down on a note card and I put it right there. And it's just a reminder of, hey, find a different way to say this. Don't say, in basketball I say it all the time, I say puts it up. Well, there's certainly way better ways to describe shooting a basket than puts it up. So I kind of just mark down a note card, puts it up with a little X through it. You got to find different ways to describe things. What about this? Someone else have a different way to describe this? Let's say now, same situation. Quarterback's here. We're going toward Mr. Foxworthy. No wrong answer. $23 right there. Perfect. Anything else? Obviously, just saying on the 23-yard line is fine as well. Love it. Let's say where I'm standing is the press box. You could say near side hash is another way because you're near. If you were on the opposite side of the field, like top of the screen, you could say far side. Things like that. Nearing the red zone is perfect. At the 23-yard line. On the doorstep of the red zone. Inching toward the end zone, you could say. You're close to scoring. Near scoring, I don't know. You kind of get the point there. Find different ways to say it. Here, let's say same situation. Now, you could just say simply, hey, backed up on their own 6-yard line. Or you could say, with their heels on their own porch. If he takes 2 steps back, he is standing in his own end zone. In safety territory, you got to try to find different ways. This would be a good example of far side hash. You got to find different ways to describe exactly what's going on. This one, very similar to what we were saying earlier, on the doorstep of the end zone. You're on enemy territory on the 6-yard line. You're just shy of the 5, in the middle of or in between the hashes, or middle of the field at the 6-yard line. Finding different ways to describe what's going on is important. Okay. You remember Cody Dale? I know you do. So Cody was awesome. Cody was willing to try anything, and he tried everything. He wasn't great at everything, but he tried everything. He was fearless. But he had probably never seen a single play of football in his life. And on a Friday, my football color analyst dropped out, and I said, Cody, what do you say? You're available tonight. Why don't you call a game with me? And he did. And he read the Football for Dummies book or whatever that day and whatever. You don't have to know a ton about the sport of football to be able to call this football game. You don't have to know every single in and out of why this is happening and what's going on. It can, a lot of it's just kind of self-explanatory. I'm not a huge soccer guy. Next week I'm going to call a soccer game. You can kind of tell once you get close to the goal, the gravity of, hey, they might be close to scoring here. They've got a good open look. Like, there's just principles of just sport. If you've played dodgeball, if you've played kickball, you kind of know the principles of sport in general and how scoring works and stuff. So you could have very little football knowledge, and if you spend an hour just watching a game and listening to what they say, you can kind of pick up enough to be able to broadcast at this level. So when I say there's little pressure, there truly is. With our community, there's very little pressure on being perfect. They love that you are there and showing them the game that they can't be at otherwise, or that they can watch later on. And maybe Grandma goes to the game, but she wants to see it again because she loves her grandson. That's cool. Yeah, I'm sure athletics loves that. Make it look too easy.
You know, a little too easy. So it's that important to me just to be part of the process. So next Friday, if you have any free time, just to stop by the booth, go up there, throw a headset on, not necessarily talk unless you want to, or just kind of observe that. But I'm really be excited. You get into the game for free. I'll have a credential for you, all that good stuff. So I don't know. Think about it next Friday. We're hoping we beat Lebanon, as we always do. Maybe they beat Lebanon.
Okay, here we go. And two, the reason why I got into the business, like the dream, if you like going to sporting events, the dream is to just go there for free for sure. Get paid to go to sporting events is even better. So that's, I mean, if it's just as simple as that, hey, you know, I'll call a couple of games just so I can get paid to go to it. Well, I mean, obviously not this year, but you know, moving forward in the industry, I just want to get paid to go to sporting events. So I'll go and call the game. I'll become a writer. Maybe you're going to, you know, write recaps in the newspaper or online or whatever. Find a way to get paid, even if, you know, running camera. The adrenaline rush of being at a game and producing a live sporting event for a live audience is awesome. You feel a lot of that on the news desk. The adrenaline rush after you finish the morning announcements and it just went successful after, you know, an hour of prep and now 5 minutes of great TV. It's almost unmatched. It's pretty cool. So I've told you all about play-by-play. Color analysis is just as important, if not more, because you've got to explain why things are happening. I told you play-by-play, you're saying the who, what, when, and where. Why is just as important. So this is where the color analysis comes in. At the network level, typically your color analysts are former coaches or former players because they know every single in and out of the game. You know, a former offensive lineman can tell you every single thing going on in the trenches. A former quarterback can tell you every single thing going through the quarterback's head right there, or a coach can explain all the coaching decisions, all that kind of stuff. At this level, we don't need perfect color analysis. It's just there to help, you know, enhance the broadcast. And like the example I gave earlier that Mr. Foxworthy says every year, you're just two buddies hanging out, drinking soda and watching a game, and you're just talking about it. If you think about it that way, it seems pretty easy. Sure, play-by-play is defined. I'll explain the who, what, when, and where, color, why, and it's just you're just hanging out talking. Oh, what a big play that was. I can't believe that the blocking scheme was so perfect that he hardly had to work for that 20-yard gain. Or it could be, you know, an interception is thrown. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, the quarterback sucked, just the interception. Maybe the color guy says, hey, that's not the quarterback's fault. It popped off the wide receiver's hands. He probably should have caught that. Or, you know, oh, hey, it's super wet outside with this rain. No wonder they're kind of having trouble throwing the ball. Like the goal of the color, you heard Tony Romo earlier on that TV example I shown. It's Jim Nantz saying, Allen drops back, throws it to Davis, touchdown. And then Romo came in immediately and said, I cannot believe, you know, here's why. And then he showed on the telestrator the lines of, well, he did this route, he did this route. They showed the replay, and now the color analyst, that's their chance to shine, and they explain what you are seeing on the replay and why the play happened. Sure, you know that it's a touchdown catch to a wide-open Gabe Davis. Normally, wide receivers aren't that darn wide open. Romo jumped in and explained why. Look at the way that he broke out toward the sideline and then faked his way back in, and now he's all alone and was able to make the catch. So that's the job of the color analyst. For TV, you are the star. It is, if not a 50-50 split between play-by-play and color, it's probably more color. It might be 30% you hear the play-by-play voice, 70% you hear the color analyst. And like with the examples I showed earlier, it does not matter if color goes and bleeds into the next play and maybe play-by-play doesn't start talking until after it's thrown because you can see what's going on. For radio, it's a little different. You heard with Kevin Harlan, that's the only voice you heard for the entire play. I cut out the color analyst spot, but it's basically 80% play-by-play, 20% color. Still very important, but you just speak less. You got to find a way for radio to get a lot of words in a small amount of time to explain what's going on to help finish painting that picture. Yeah, so it's like Harlan did a good job explaining he contorts his body, gets his feet in bounds, twists, and then stays in. There's a touchdown. Then his color analyst would come in and say exactly what Romo was saying. He is so wide open because of the way that he broke on the outside and cut his way back in, and then the safety tripped. That's the kind of stuff that the audience can't see, and the play-by-play guy didn't describe, so color pops in and does that. I think it's a temporary thing. Mark Sanchez stabbed a guy and has a big old hearing from what he did in Indianapolis. He'll be off the air forever. Tony Romo, we'll forget about it in a year and he'll be back on because he's so good and gets paid so much. I don't know, maybe. If he's gone for the whole season, we'll forget about it. If he comes back mid-season, it'll be a little reminder. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it's the end of his career. I think, whether it should be or not, it's a different story. But I think he'll be back. But because he's so good. If he was Mark Sanchez is the fourth guy on CBS, they don't give a crap about him. They filled his shoes the next day. Someone else flew into Indy and called the game, and we forgot about Mark Sanchez. But Romo's a little bit bigger deal. What's funny is when Romo speaks, you heard it earlier, the Tyreek Hill play where he turned around and gave the peace sign. He was like, whoop! He just makes weird noises. He sounds like he's drunk in the booth, and then for him to get caught with the OWI was kind of ironic because he's going, oh, Jim, I can't believe he made that like he sounds drunk when he's calling the game. But that's the whole point of, it's almost like a Barstool Sports broadcast. They're just up there just hanging out in their back porch talking ball. And that's the lore of Tony Romo's color analyst is that that's kind of his style. Is it's like we're two dudes hanging out, and I'm not afraid to say some weird things because that's what I'm thinking is what the audience might be thinking, as opposed to J.J. Watt is filling his shoes. He is a lot more technical. He's going to explain why in a lot more technical sense. So there's just different ways to skin the cat. Yeah.
What time does first hour end? I just had musical theater.
So you gotta leave me at 55.
55? Okay, I just had musical theater.
I know your generation never gets on time, so.
No, I do know.
That's when the big
Yeah.
gets on the 11.
Yeah, they just put digital clocks all around Roncalli High School, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Stats at halftime. Email where? Are you still able to print?
I can write it down.
Oh, I don't want you to have to write it down.
Well, because I have like a fill in, not fill in the blank, or like just a.
Oh, because you won't have a printer there.
Yeah,
I forgot about it.
they won't. They wouldn't let the away team use.
So, to me, it would be great.
Yeah, sure.
So when you're on air and you're speaking, you get a bit excited, like you're talking, explaining.
Mm-hmm.
When I do that, I struggle like tripping up on my words.
Oh,
saying
absolutely,
the wrong thing.
100%.
How do you get through that?
I mean, it is completely okay tripping up and just taking a second, taking a breath, and restarting or continuing. So there's nothing wrong with that. It happens all the time, even at the professional level. So the more reps you do, the more comfortable you get with it. But that's something that, I'll do tomorrow night in the game that I call. There's nothing wrong with that. So and like I said, no one's gonna sit at home and be like, oh, this guy sucks. Like that's not how people usually think.
Then I had another question about like projecting your voice. Into
That's big. That's big. I'll mention that when we as we come back. But you're right. That is very important. So trying to make it like you're not just talking to the mic right in front of you. You're talking to like almost to the window in front of you. So you want to really project further instead of just whispering into the mic. Yeah, that's a good question. It's the same thing as when you're on the anchor desk. You don't want to whisper when you're up there. You want to talk to the camera and like as you're talking all the way up to the screen.
Like a certain air of like confidence.
100%. Yeah, and sitting up straight, opening your diaphragm, that kind of stuff will help a lot.
I was just really interested in voice stuff because
Yeah.
I want to do like IT stuff, but on the side I've been really interested in voice acting.
Ah, that's huge. Yeah.
I really want to do voice acting.
Yeah.
I love hearing like in June I went to a Comic-Con and I got to see one of my favorite voice actors, Christopher Sabat,
Okay.
in person, and I got to
Oh, that's cool.
get his autograph. And
Nice.
stuff. And I've been kind of inspired to do
Yeah.
it's so cool because you can have somebody that does like this deep grovelly villain and then they're like someone's absolutely
Right.
stupid at something else.
Exactly. Or all the famous guys that are like, voicing the Disney cartoons. And it's like, it's Samuel L. Jackson who's shooting up bad guys in Hitman's Bodyguard. And then the next day he's, Mr. Frozone or whatever on Incredibles. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, when you do that, stand up or sit up straight and really, like, as you're talking to the mic, really project and be confident and almost a little over the top. It's going to feel over the top, but that's how you want it to be.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, is it real?
Yeah, but I'll have him run down the stats because I won't be. I'm not running, so feel like they come in and walk up there.
Are you in pain?
Not really right now.
The boots are amazing. They're pain in the butt, I know. But
Yeah.
when I broke my ankle, I put the boot on. It felt really good. For a lot better.
I'm hoping they can. I go later today. I'm hoping they can come back and walk on it. Okay. I'll be fine, but
Okay.
right now they won't let me walk on it. I think that's one I would try to get rid of. I did a lot quicker.
Brandon, is this all, do you have any questions? I know you're kind of quiet over here. You have a question? Okay. Yes, I was going to do that yesterday, but you didn't run.
I did.
You did not run yesterday.
I did.
Probably because I'm crunching here because
Yeah. I usually try to get there like an hour to an hour and a half early for football. For basketball, maybe a little bit, maybe an hour early is fine. You'll kind of get the feel for it. But like tomorrow, my game's at 7. I'll probably get there around 5:30 or so. Get you time to if you are set up and ready and prepared, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs for a half hour, you're gonna have a good broadcast. Like it's almost the goal is just to have nothing to do for a minute. Yeah. Yeah.
that's the best hour of my life, is sitting
Oh yeah, just waiting on the game to start.
watching the stadium fill up and just know that everything is right.
Uh huh.
Sometimes I've done that before, and then I go to hit stream. It's 6:50. In fact, I called you one.
Uh huh.
And it's like low bandwidth or whatever. You're like, "Oh, you freaking kidding me?"
Yeah. Right.
Because the way a hotspot works in the stadium, we hate hotspots, but the way a hotspot works is when you get to the stadium, you do a speed test, you're like, man, this thing's cranking. I'm like, yes. And when that stadium starts to fill in, for whatever reason,
Everybody's phones start taking up the
everybody sucks
tower.
the juice out of the straw, Next thing you know, your little meter's and then people are texting you, hey, what's going on with the game?
It's awesome. But if you get there early, you can go talk to the coaches. You can go talk to you can get pronunciations from the cheerleaders or from, support staff or whatever, and you just feel more confident. Or maybe you cram a little bit last second prep in, or you're just sitting there scrolling through Twitter because you got nothing better to do, and you feel confident and ready to go. So I usually try to get there an hour and a half for football. But certainly there's nothing wrong with 45 minutes. Whatever it takes to get set up and have some time just to take it easy and breathe and take a drink and go to the bathroom and that kind of stuff. So. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't found one. I haven't found one for me yet. Because you don't want to force something, but you'll. I mean, I guess there are some things that I say that are kind of not signature, but yeah, that kind of feel like that a little bit. So don't try to force something, but when you find the thing, it's pretty cool. Matt Taylor for the Colts always says touchdown INDY, and it's a big thing and it's a big deal, and he loves it. So if you find things like that is cool, but you just don't want to describe the play the exact same way every time. So finding a signature in the big moments is cool. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, definitely. We got through this. All right, so you guys didn't want to be brave earlier with the easy stuff. Now I got some hard stuff for you. Does somebody want to give a call of this play? There's no audio. It's just going to be you, and you just try to describe what's going on a TV broadcast. Yeah, right. I'll do the first one, and then I'll let someone else. You mind hitting play for me? Wright drops back. Down the field, he's open. Hendricks with the catch. He'll make a move. Breaking the tackle into the end zone. Great camera shot for the touchdown. No, this was, I think it might have been Maggie. I don't know. Anyway, no. This was Bernice in the South Park big puffer jacket. Yeah. This is November, yeah. So, really? Yeah, this is, I guess you didn't teach camera work very well that year, but we're changing that. Yeah, no, yeah. But this looks silly. If you saw it on ESPN, you'd throw up, but our fans are like, who cares? I just saw it. They scored a touchdown. This is awesome. Yeah, right? So you could see what happened. That's also maybe half of the role of the play-by-play guy is just keep an eye on your monitor, and if you see that the camera goes black or it falls down, they miss it, then maybe you got to describe a little bit more of what's going on. But yeah, there's an example. You don't have to describe every single little thing, but the big highlights. Right, drops back. Open is Hendricks, makes the catch. He'll spin free and score a touchdown. Who wants to go next? Can you hit the right arrow for me? See if that moves to the next slide. And then hit play when you're, hang on, I'll give you some. So right's the quarterback, and that's all you need to know for this play. Hit play when you're ready.
Right drops back, scrambles, up the middle, runs it in for a touchdown. Line on the right.
Well, you didn't know he was in the end zone yet when you said it, but yeah, that's a good. There you go. So there's an example. You don't have to say every little thing, but he scrambles, he evades pressure, and then he dives head over heels into the end zone for a touchdown. Weibo strikes first. Next arrow. Who wants to go next? Uh-oh. I guess that might have been the only one. Here, do this previous one. You ready? So Wright's the quarterback. Hendricks will make the catch. You ready? Go ahead.
Shift to the right. Right drops back, fires downfield. It's caught by Hendricks. He's going to break a tackle. He's going to run all the way for a touchdown.
I love it. 2-score lead for the Stars early on in the first quarter. Weibo with a big lead early on in semi-state. Maybe explain a little bit of the importance as he crosses the end zone. The Stars with 2 quick ones. We're only halfway through the quarter. Yeah, I think so, yeah. And this was the first season, too, that we were doing this. So the fact that we were good enough would have been, 11 games in is pretty cool. Anybody else want to go? You already know the play. Hi.
Hi, how's your arm?
Good. Hi. Well, you just saw this play. What does he do on the play? Yeah, and then he scores. That's all you got to know. Do you have to know the pancake block that the right tackle does, or all the ins and outs of the play design or the routes that the receivers are running? No. You just got to know the basics of runs up the middle and he scores. It's that simple. The more you know, the better, obviously, but you can do it with a very baseline knowledge. So you want to try it? All right. You ready? Wright is the guy's name. You ready? Beautiful. And now the Stars strike first. You see it's 0-0. You know that much. You know that they score early. Oh, dang. I thought you were joking. Anybody else want to give it a try with this play? $20. Well, you could buy a case of those Bloom drinks. All right, here we go. You ready? So Wright throws to Hendricks.
Right drops back and throws to Hendricks. Hendricks catches it, spins out of the tackle, making his way for the end zone.
Perfect. You're giving up money left and right over here. Where was this when I was around?
No.
So it can be literally that simple. Thanks for your help.
Okay. I got money for you. All right. This is sponsor money. All right. Come on, who else wants to do it? Heck yeah, Iris.
All right, we're gonna give you a different one here.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Not the cat. All right. Allen will throw to Davis.
Oh geez, sorry.
You ready? You see the score down here? Who's going? All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Wait a minute. Let me mute it. Oh, I might not be able to mute it. Fox, is there a volume over here somewhere?
Maxed out over here.
Can you kill it? Yeah. All right. Bam! One way you could have said that, you saw how hard he threw it. You could describe that because that was a big part of the play. Oh, he lasers one to Davis. So you obviously they can see it's a laser, but that is kind of the next progression is Allen with a rocket to Davis for a touchdown. Who's next? Yep, different play. All right, let's get through all the fans cheering. They think they just won the divisional round. They didn't. They suck. But now this is the game that changed the overtime rules. All right, so Allen will throw to Diggs. Ready? This is for the 2-point attempt. Beautiful. Yeah, right? And I love the way that you described at first, empty pocket, he's got nobody there. And then, now he's being chased, rolls out, makes a play. They can see that, but not everyone watching has the trained eye to know how big of a deal that is. So you emphasizing that was a big deal. Who's going next? You can do the cat one. I love it. Heck yeah. Right? We're about to find out. Ready? You can't be looking at the money yet. You haven't talked. All right. Here we go. Heck yeah.
Cats are a hard animal to catch, I will say.
This was 2 days after Halloween too. So
Racing across the field, still going. Oh my goodness, down the chute, it's gone.
I love it. This is 2 days after Halloween, so a black cat is showing up, and it was funny. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Same pair of gloves, all that stuff. All right, let's move past. Good job, guys. So you see, it is not as hard as it seems, especially because you're not going to be doing it alone. Right there, you guys did it alone every time, but you're going to have somebody up there with you to take some heat off your back as well. All right, look, this is a little blown up, so sorry you can't see the top or bottom, but here's an example of my prep sheet. It has every bit of information. Does this laser work? What's the button for it? All right. Oh, all right. Well, I'll just come up to the screen like I'm a weatherman. So here's the name of the team up top. I've got their record, what they did last season, how many games they've won in a row. This is all the information that I would need for a broadcast for the offense of one team. I've got easy numbers to see. So as you're sitting there calling the game, you look up, number 12 has it. Well, that's Polston, the quarterback. And then, you can the Toledo commit. I've got some information here. Maybe the next time I talk about Polston, hey, he's scored 2 touchdowns in every game. He's a baller. He's honorable mention all conference. He's got almost 1,500 yards this season. Or maybe, in the second quarter, I could say, oh, he's surpassed the 1,500-yard mark. All the information I need here. He hands it off. Dodo with the run. He's got his 4th touchdown of the season. Things like that. I've got reserves here, all this. So basically, I've just crammed about as much information into a legal-sized paper as humanly possible. I've got their schedule over here, all this good stuff, career numbers for the receivers. All this is for a high school team, and it's all available online for the most part if you can find it. I've got team stats up here, all this good stuff. And then I've got some keys to the game that the coach gave me. I've got some quotes from the coach, all this kind of stuff. So all this is as much information as I can cram into a legal-sized sheet of paper as possible. Maybe it's a little overkill, but the goal is to have way too much and use hardly any of it. Because if I only get through 15% of what I've written down, it means it's a good game and I've got so much to talk about on the field that I don't need to use all this prep. If they're losing by 30 in the second quarter, now all of a sudden you're running out of stuff to talk about, because how important really is a 5-yard run up the middle when you're down 30, which hopefully won't be the case tomorrow night, but Tri-West is pretty darn good. So the goal is to over-prep and not use it. Sometimes you'll use a decent chunk of it, sometimes you won't, and that means you're having a good call regardless. So this is kind of an example of prep. Yours does not have to look this intensive. I'm a nerd and I don't have a life, so this is what I do during the week before I call a game on a Friday. But you want a lot of this information written down somewhere. Foxworthy showed you guys the prep sheet that I did a handful of years ago, where it was just bullet points of who the coach is, what the record are, here's some stats, that kind of stuff. So basically just trying to get some sort of prep. But the big part of this is I have the starting players, their numbers, and their names right there. So as you're calling the game, you can quickly look down and pinpoint. When you see number 7 gets the catch, are you going to memorize every player's name on the other team? Probably not. But you see number 7, you look down at your sheet, you find number 7, Hicks with the catch. You really want to make sure, because if you just call it off the roster they hand you, it's a lot harder to sit there and look through and try to read through the font and do all this whole thing. You want it in an easy way where you can just quickly pinpoint who's doing what. This is the prep I would do as a play-by-play announcer, but not as a color guy. As the color guy, you're more looking for stories and different ways to help add to the play-by-play announcer. So maybe you have notes of like Polston, Toledo commit, 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns. Like you can have some baseline stats and numbers, and like their best wide receiver is Hicks. He is he's got more yards than Tyrone Tracy did, who's an NFL player. Like you can just have a lot. It's a lot different prep from play-by-play to color. So you're basically looking for stories and maybe a couple little stats, but not much, because the play-by-play guy is going to have most of that, and the color you're trying to add color to the broadcast. Oh, 100%. Talk about his old man being the former backup quarterback for Peyton Manning. You talk about how the year he had last year and was an honorable mention or whatever, and then now he's one of the favorites for Mr. Football. Find all the different Sorgy stuff you can find, because that's a big deal. Yeah. Where's he going? Is he going to Louisville? Is he? All right. Weird choice, but yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, find all the, especially where they're going to college is huge. People love hearing that kind of stuff. So you want to find as much of that kind of stuff as you can. And like the blue that I have up here with the coach's quotes, that's huge for the color guy, having that. Maybe your entire pregame as a color analyst is talking about how he loves the quote law of the jungle and the strength of the pack is all that you could talk about that kind of stuff. So dominate your sandbox. They really want to make sure everyone's doing their individual job and not worried about their neighbor and that kind of stuff. So this is kind of an example of prep. Here's another example. It's a lot more simple. I do this a little bit more for radio because I'm saying 1,000 words a minute and I want this kind of stuff to add. It works just the same for TV as well, but this is more of a storyline kind of thing because for TV, maybe you don't have time to read every single stat, but you want to know that Toriano Clinton, the running back, is the active leader in career yards in Division II, things like that. So this is a little bit more bullet point, just quick. Their number, I see quarterback number 2, he goes back Conkling with it, and then you can say, the Pendleton Heights graduate. So just a couple different, your prep sheet doesn't always have to look like this. It's fine looking like this as well, is kind of what I was trying to get at here. Derek had the go-ahead touchdown catch a couple weeks earlier. I have that written down, things like that. So when you talk about a guy, you can just look down and quickly have a couple of quick notes to add extra to what you're saying. It's a big difference than just calling it off the roster sheet and not doing as much work. So a couple examples there. A few things that I'm sure Foxworthy's talked to you about already I want to get at. You don't want to dress up like a lack of better words, like a slob to these games because you are in a heightened role than just a fan. If you show up wearing, just a graphic T-shirt and some basketball shorts, you're not going to look good in the press box where everybody's working and you want to be more professional. So looking professional is a big deal. Having khaki pants or a nice pair of shorts, if it's a nice pair, shorts are a little iffy, but if it's a nice pair, maybe dress slacks. You don't want to show up wearing jeans and a graphic T-shirt. So you want to kind of dress up basically like Foxworthy does every day in his old man polo and khakis, or the equivalent for girls. So I'm sure you've got some WBTV swag too that you can wear and that kind of stuff. Beautiful. That's awesome. So you're in there with professionals and you're working a game. You want to make sure that you dress like it because that's the image you're putting out. But also, if you dress confident, you're going to feel a lot more confident on your call. My best call is when I'm wearing a suit because you feel a little different when you're wearing a suit. You feel like you belong a little bit more. My worst call is when I showed up in a T-shirt and it's like, I learned my lesson. Don't do that again because you feel out of place. So the better when you're on the anchor desk, the better you dress. When you wear the jacket, you feel a little bit better than if you were just up there, in a tank top. So to get better, you want to listen to what you did. You want to go back and listen to your call the next day on the drive home or maybe a week from now or later on. You want to listen to yourself, and you're going to hate it, and people hate listening to themselves, and they hate hearing their own voice, but that's how you get better. Because if you just go up there and you just talk, sure, you're going to get better every time because you're more comfortable, but you're really going to hear the things you're doing wrong if you go back and listen to yourself, and you're going to say, man, what an idiot. Why did I say that? Why do I keep saying the same 3 phrases over and over? So going back and listening is very important in terms of getting better at doing this, whether you're color, whether you're play-by-play, or whether you're running camera. Just go back and watch a quarter and see, okay, well, maybe I was a bit more shaky here than I should have been, or maybe I was zoomed in too much. And you don't realize it in the middle of the game because your adrenaline's going and you're just trying to put the best product you can. But going back later and being critical of yourself is important. Or sending it to Mr. Fox where they say, hey, I know you did PA tonight, so you couldn't watch, but can you just go back and watch a quarter and tell me what you thought of how I could do better and that kind of stuff. You want to talk with coaches before the game. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. If you get there early enough to where you're twiddling your thumbs, go down and talk to the coach. Say, hey, introduce yourself. I'm calling the game for WBTV. We want to we want to represent Tri-West the best we can. What can you tell me about this kid, Sorgi? It looks like he's real good on paper, but what do you think? And he'll give you a dynamite quote saying how this guy's, the second coming of Peyton Manning. And now you've got that much more to use on your broadcast. What the coaches say is huge. So bring down, record it on your phone hey, if you don't mind me recording it, can you just tell me, you know, what do you think the strengths of your defense are going to be this year? And he'll sit there and tell you. Or email him ahead of time. I always email the two coaches ahead of time at the beginning of the week and go from there. So you always want to talk to coaches if you can. You definitely want to get pronunciations right, because the last thing Grandma in Florida wants to hear is you say her grandson's name wrong. It's been in the family for generations. So Foxworthy likes to talk to the cheerleaders when he does PA, because they're, you guys know your classmates' names, so you just go to someone maybe that's not in the middle of warming up and punting balls and that kind of stuff. You just go talk to one of the managers, trainers, cheerleaders, something like that, or assistant coaches. So make sure you get the pronunciations right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. People are like, who are these? I mean, they don't think it that extreme at our level. But if Jim Nance is pronouncing the guy's name wrong, you're sitting at home thinking, is this guy not even trying? Is he not do any prep? He's not talking to anybody. What is he? He doesn't even know the quarterback's name. What's the matter with him? So you really, yeah, that is very important. We've been on the air here at WBTV Sports, and we'll have a parent come up and say, hey, my grandma just called me, said you're pronouncing my kid's name wrong. Can you get it right? So just going down, that's part of showing up early enough where you can go down with a roster in hand, find someone and say, hey, can you just run through every name on the roster for me real quick? Or maybe write down a couple that are like a little iffy. Hey, can you pronounce this guy's name for me? Sometimes they don't know. They'll say, hey, 23, come over here, and then they'll, whatever, they'll help you. So you really want to make sure you get the pronunciations right. And also, if you butcher a name, you're going to feel like crap in the middle of your call. You're like, well, what the? If you're stumbling because you don't know the guy's name. So really knowing the guy's name is very important ahead of time. And then networking is huge, and I'm sure you're going to stress that all year long. Like you said, when I work with Kevin Harlan on Westwood One, I'm not calling the game. I'm not his color guy. Maybe I'm just his spotter and I'm pointing out the names, or maybe I'm just his stats guy or whatever. You want to talk to these people and just explain where you're at in your career, because everybody wants to help. And the more people you know, the better chance you have of getting a decent job. If you just go in and think that, oh, my resume will speak for myself, job employers see 50,000 resumes in a week for a good job. What makes you think they're going to pick yours out of a giant stack that they probably don't even want to read, and they're just going to have AI run through it? But if Matt Taylor of the Colts calls on your behalf and says, hey, this kid, he's real good, I want you to give his tape a listen, now all of a sudden you're cooking. So you really want to meet people. When you're at these games, Scott Carney, as much of a goofball as he can be for Radio Mom, you just go up and say, hey, Scott, my name's Nathaniel. I'm working for WBTV. Looking forward to seeing you all season. It's nice to meet you, and then just make a connection there. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And two, his full-time job is teaching broadcasting at Monrovia High School. So, that kind of shows you with play-by-play, is he able to support his family just calling IndyCar? Probably, because I know they pay well, but they don't pay big bucks. So sometimes, it's like what I'm doing now. I'm working all this, extra stuff here left and right that's not play-by-play, so that way I can call games on Friday nights. Because I could just go get a full-time job working at a bank, and I'll make plenty of money, but I'm not going to have any time to do play-by-play. So trying to, he is like everything you just said great about him, and then he teaches on the side. But also because he teaches at Monrovia, he's trying to shape the next generation of broadcasters at Monrovia. He would love to talk to you if you see him. You go up, and he'll spend 20 minutes talking to you and giving you advice and giving you his phone number, giving you his email, and because he wants to help the next generation. That's why he's teaching. Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, my experience in the industry, everybody's more nice than they're not. I mean,
100%.
truly wanting to help you and networking. And not just saying, hey, I'll take your card, great. Stay in touch with it. Stay in touch. And the game is going to be a good resource.
Yeah. There's my email if you want it. A couple last notes here. Like I said earlier, the community loves what we're doing. They love football. They are not going to think bad about you if you stumble on a call or if you stutter when you're on air. They don't care. They just want to see their nephew playing, and they want to hear some commentary with it. I remember when we were doing it, they would always say that we were better than ESPN. Hell no, we weren't better than ESPN, but they thought so because they had not been used to any sort of level of commentary when they watched these games, so they loved it. Even though I thought I sounded like crap, and I did, they didn't think so because it's a filter that they watch these games and listen to these games with. So it is very low pressure. It's hard for sure, and when I mentioned prep, the kind of rule of thumb is you want to prep for 3 times longer than you're on air for. I mean, when you're doing the newscast and you're reading off a script, you read the script 2, 3, 4 times. You read it a few more times than just, oh, I'm going to be on air for 5 minutes. Let me prep for 5 minutes. You want to prep for longer than that. So if I'm doing a 2.5-hour broadcast, I picked a bad number. 2-hour communications guys can't do math, so good. Yeah, I don't know. So if you're doing a 2-hour broadcast, you probably prep for about 6 hours during the week. Whether that's calling and emailing coaches, or whether that's actually filling out the stat sheet that I put, you want to try to prep about 3 times as long as you're going to be on air. And if you do that, then it's going to feel like you're on air for 5 minutes because you're so prepared and ready to go. So it's hard work, and it's certainly nerve-wracking. And when you got the headset on, it's an adrenaline rush. But it is very rewarding. It's very fun, and there's nothing quite like it. And it is okay to be nervous. Cody Dale threw up 3 times before we went on air that day because he had never watched a down of football. But we had a good broadcast, and I thought he did all right until he spilled Dr. Pepper all over that Mac right there. That's why the old one. Okay, well, the A key is now sticky on that, but Brand, it might have been the first game we had. I think he's a clums. That's awesome, but he was nervous as can be. It's okay to be nervous because the community doesn't care. They just want to watch and listen to you.
Because what happens is we usually get about 1,000 views on the night of, and then all of a sudden it just skyrockets the next day because that's when the teams are watching, the families that were in the stands are watching, and then it just kind of explodes. So we'll be over 2,000 views for this game.
But on that note, you don't want to talk crap about the other team's quarterback because then his mom's listening and is going to give Mr. Foxworthy a nice call the next day. So you want to be, especially at the high school level, as positive as can be. In the NFL, maybe they're a little bit more critical if someone makes a mistake. But here, you want to, if they're, the game-winning touchdown, maybe a guy tripped and was an idiot in the back end on defense and blew the game. You don't want to sit there and say, oh, this guy sucks. I can't believe he would blow it. You say, dang, what a job by the quarterback to find his open receiver. Great job to the receiver to stay open and make the catch. Find every positive you can. Now, certainly, there are going to be some blunders that you got to point out, but you don't want to be super critical of the other guy. Because if that was you out there and you're playing soccer and you completely whiff, you don't want the announcers up there talking crap about you. And your mom certainly doesn't want to hear someone talking about crap, or else they're going to show up and fight you. So, yeah. You said the heart attack story? That came from Scott Eaker. I don't know if he was exaggerating or not, but Grandma, announcer's like, oh, they need to bring the ambulance out for this guy. Grandma has a heart attack, goes to the hospital, and the guy jumps up and is in the play the next game or the next play. So you want to be very careful when it comes to that. Also, I mean, with HIPAA laws, you got to be really careful saying injuries for for minors anyway. Maybe your buddy broke his ankle, but if you go on air and say, hey, he broke his ankle, now you could be in trouble. I mean, you're not going to be in trouble, but you can be in trouble for saying that. So if you just say ankle injury, you're safe. If you say fractured clavicle, now you're in a little bit more trouble. So you just want to be as general as possible. Say, we don't know when he's coming back, or maybe you do know. Maybe say, hey, he's going to miss this game, but they think he's going to be back next game. That stuff's okay. You just want to be general about it.
At the end of the game, do you thank your crew, thank the AD, all that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I write down a list of the visiting AD. I'll thank Mr. Foxworthy. I'll thank the camera guy for sure, because you guys do not get enough credit for running camera, and anybody that helped make the broadcast happen, because it doesn't take any work on your end, and it's a good thing for them. So, absolutely. Any questions? Anybody else? What you got? Yeah, that is a good point. As a play-by-play guy, I try to keep stats as general as possible. Color guy, you're a little bit more. You really want to stay away from stats as possible. Maybe if you're really good at multitasking, you can keep some, but you want to let kind of the play-by-play guy say more of the stats. I don't know. For high school games, I definitely keep track of drives, so I'll just write down on a pad of paper. Started at the 25-yard line, ends in touchdown. Now it's a 75-yard drive, and you can say they start the game with a 75-yard scoring drive. Keep track. Next one was a punt. Next one was a 3-and-out. Next one was an interception, and kind of keep track of that stuff. Definitely keep track of how many touchdowns people score. But do you need to keep track of every yard that the running back goes for? You're probably not going to have the best broadcast call if you're writing down too many notes. But I keep track of the big stuff. When the drive starts, just write down 35-yard line. When it ends, write down 45-yard line. Now you know how the drive went. So general stuff. Right on my spot chart that I had up here, I would write down when Polston throws a touchdown, I would put a little tally next to his name, and when Bonowit catches it, I put a little 5-yard TD in somewhere next to his name. So now when he catches one later, I say, hey, it's his second touchdown of the game, which doubles his total of the season, which is why you have the prep and the stats there. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You definitely, like, maybe when you introduce him the first time, Bo Polston, the Toledo commit, star quarterback, but every play, Bo's an easy name, but if you're saying Enpo Dodo every single time he catches the ball, Dodo is completely fine. So, yeah, last name is cool. Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah.